Hey guys, it's Ellie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So, if you've never been here before, this is just a podcast where I read through one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and I give a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times. So, stick around. So, if you remember last episode, we read Alma chapter 49, in which Amalickiah and all of his Lamanite armies officially attack the Nephites, and Captain Moroni, being the awesome Chad that he is, successfully fortifies the weakest cities among the Nephites, therefore successfully defending against the Lamanite attack as a whole, because the Lamanites, of course, attacked the weakest parts first. But unfortunately for them, they didn't realize that the weakest parts were no longer the weakest parts. So yeah, it's a very good allegory for our own spiritual preparedness. So yeah, go back and listen to that if you haven't already. But with that said, I think let's read Alma chapter 50. And now it came to pass that Moroni did not stop making preparations for war, or to defend his people against the Lamanites, for he caused that his armies should commence in the commencement of the 20th year of the reign of the judges, and that they should commence in digging up heaps of earth round about all the cities, throughout all the land which was possessed by the Nephites. And upon the top of these ridges of earth he caused that there should be timbers, yea, works of timbers, built up to the height of a man round about the cities. And he caused that upon those works of timbers there should be a frame of pickets built upon the timbers round about, and they were strong and high. And he caused towers to be erected that overlooked those works of pickets, and he caused places of security to be built upon those towers, that the stones and the arrows of the Lamanites could not hurt them. And they were prepared that they could cast stones from the top thereof, according to their pleasure and their strength, and slay him who should attempt to approach near the walls of the city. Thus Moroni did prepare strongholds against the coming of their enemies round about every city in all the land. So it appears that Captain Moroni was not satisfied with just defending against one of the attacks by the Lamanites. He knows that that's not gonna be the last one. And so instead of stopping once he's fortified the weakest parts of the Nephite cities, he fortifies all of them. And he doesn't just do what he did for the other cities. He, in fact, it seems, fortified even more than he did in Ammonihah and Noah, which we read last chapter. He does a bunch of stuff. Not only does he have people dig heaps of earth round about all the cities, which they did before they had a wall and a ditch, but also on top of those bridges, he adds timbers built up to the height of a man, as it says in verse 2. And then verse 3, on top of those timbers, there should be pickets. And then on top of those pickets, places of security, so towers that people can stand in and throw arrows and stones at people coming. So he is not just building a wall. He is doing everything he can possibly do. He's innovating when it comes to fortifying cities, because last chapter, if you remember, the Lamanites were surprised that the city was fortified in this way, because no one had really done that before. No one had really fortified cities in the way that Captain Moroni had, and he's continuing to innovate and do new things to keep the Nephites safe. He does not rest. He doesn't just trust that beating them once will be enough, because he knows it won't. So anyways, I just love to see Moroni's tenacity when it comes to fortifying the cities. I'm sure his armies are tired of digging holes and building walls, but it's very, very effective, and it will probably save a lot of his army's lives. And it came to pass that Moroni caused that his armies should go forth into the east wilderness, yea, and they went forth and drove all the Lamanites who were in the east wilderness into their own lands, which were south of the land of Zarahemla. And the land of Nephi did run in a straight course from the east to the west. And it came to pass that when Moroni had driven all the Lamanites out of the east wilderness, which was north of the lands of their own possessions, he caused that the inhabitants who were in the land of Zarahemla, and in their land round about, should go forth into the east wilderness, even to the borders by the seashore, and possess the land. And he also placed armies on the south in the borders of their possessions, and caused them to erect fortifications, that they might secure their armies and their people from the hands of their enemies. And thus he cut off all the strongholds of the Lamanites in the east wilderness, yea, and also on the west, fortifying the line between the Nephites and the Lamanites, between the land of Zarahemla and the land of Nephi, from the west sea running by the head of the river Sidon, the Nephites possessing all the land northward, yea, even all the land which was northward of the land bountiful, according to their pleasure. So not only does Moroni focus on the cities, he focuses on the details, but he also focuses on the broader picture. He focuses on the border between the Nephites and the Lamanites in general. Before, it seemed like the Nephite land did not extend between the east and west seas, and so there was some ways that the Lamanites could kind of get around and maybe even flank the Nephite cities. But now he's fortified that line by kicking out the Lamanites that used to be east of them and taking that land for themselves so they can better defend their families and they can defend that borderline that he is strengthening. And so again, he's not just focusing on the minute details of which city has a wall, which city has pickets, which city has towers, but he also focuses on the broader picture. He is not one that gets caught up in details. He does focus on details, but he doesn't get caught up in them. He also focuses on the broader picture. And so when we are defending ourselves against, we could say, the attacks of Lamanites, or rather the temptations of Satan, we don't want to just focus on tiny little things like, oh, what am I going to do in this specific situation? But rather, we should also focus on our broader spiritual health. Like, how are we feeling? Are we feeling vulnerable? Are we tired? Things like that can definitely have a bearing on how effective Satan's attacks are on us. And so being aware of that and taking account of that helps you stay a lot safer by being self-aware of how you currently are as a whole. So, yeah. Again, these war chapters teach us a lot about defending against Satan, and this is another way. Don't just focus on the specific details or the specific temptations. Focus on your general spiritual health, and even your physical health. Being exhausted can make you more vulnerable to Satan's temptations. It makes making good decisions harder. So, again, something to keep in mind. Thus Moroni, with his armies, which did increase daily because of the assurance of protection which his works did bring forth unto them, did seek to cut off the strength and the power of the Lamanites from off the lands of their possessions, that they should have no power upon the lands of their possession. And it came to pass that the Nephites began the foundation of a city, and they called the name of the city Moroni, and it was by the east sea, and it was on the south by the line of the possessions of the Lamanites. And they also began a foundation for a city between the city of Moroni and the city of Aaron, joining the borders of Aaron and Moroni, and they called the name of the city, or the land, Nephiha. And they also began in that same year to build many cities on the north, one in a particular manner which they called Lehi, which was in the north by the borders of the seashore. And thus ended the 20th year. And in these prosperous circumstances were the people of Nephi in the commencement of the 21st year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi. And they did prosper exceedingly, and they became exceedingly rich, yea, and they did multiply and wax strong in the land. And thus we see how merciful and just are all the dealings of the Lord, to the fulfilling of all his words unto the children of men. Yea, we can behold that his words are verified, even at this time, which he spake unto Lehi, saying, Blessed art thou and thy children, and they shall be blessed, inasmuch as they shall keep my commandments, they shall prosper in the land. But remember, inasmuch as they will not keep my commandments, they shall be cut off from the presence of the Lord. And we see that these promises have been verified to the people of Nephi, for it has been their quarrelings and their contentions, yea, their murderings and their plunderings, their idolatry, their whoredoms and their abominations, which were among themselves, which brought upon them their wars and their destructions. So this brings up a point that I actually made a couple of chapters ago, which talks about how the Nephites understand deliverance from God. Because in our modern day, sometimes we see God's deliverance as a gift that he hands us on a silver platter. We don't necessarily do anything for it, except for obey his commandments, but we just kind of receive deliverance. We just receive prosperity. But we just read about 10 or 15 verses just talking about the physical preparation and defenses that Captain Moroni has been doing. And it's because of those defenses that the Nephite people are so safe and so defended and therefore so prosperous. So an outsider would look at this and go, well, it was just Captain Moroni that did all this. Except the people of Nephi themselves credit their safety and their prosperity to God. So they don't understand prosperity from God as a gift from him that happens without their input. They see prosperity and deliverance from God as something that God guides them towards, that he helps them achieve on their own. And Captain Moroni is kind of the face of that. He is doing the legwork. He is guiding his troops to make these defenses and increasing their borders in order to fulfill God's gift of deliverance. God is not snapping his fingers and stopping anything from attacking them. God is guiding them in the ways to best defend themselves. God here is not just blessing his kids because they're righteous. He's building the character of his kids because they're righteous. How cool is that? Anyways, I've made this point before, but it's such a cool concept that we kind of forget in our modern day. Deliverance from God is not handed to us on a silver platter. We earn it with the guidance from God. And that guidance is the part that is the gift from him. And those who are faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord were delivered at all times, whilst thousands of their wicked brethren have been consigned to bondage, or to perish by the sword, or to dwindle in unbelief, and mingle with the Lamanites. But behold, there never was a happier time among the people of Nephi since the days of Nephi than in the days of Moroni, yea, even at this time in the 21st year of the reign of the judges. And it came to pass that the 22nd year of the reign of the judges also ended in peace, yea, and also the 23rd year. And it came to pass that in the commencement of the 24th year of the reign of the judges, there would also have been peace among the people of Nephi, had it not been for the contention which took place among them concerning the land of Lehi and the land of Morianton, which joined upon the borders of Lehi, both of which were on the borders by the seashore. For behold, the people who possessed the land of Morianton did claim a part of the land of Lehi. Therefore, there began to be a warm contention between them, insomuch that the people of Morianton took up arms against their brethren, and they were determined by the sword to slay them. So in verse 23 it says that there was never a happier time among the people of Nephi, and that is because the people of Nephi were so safe and so prosperous because of that safety. And then it says the 21st and 22nd year ended in peace because of this safety that they had against the Lamanites. But then it says in verse 25 that the 24th year, there would have been peace among the people of Nephi had it not been for a contention which took place among them. And so it's not the Lamanites that is disrupting their prosperity, it is themselves. And I think that says a lot about how prosperity from God works. When we are following his commandments, when we are faithful, we don't necessarily avoid all problems, but we are better qualified to deal with them, as we see Moroni defending his people and God not just stopping anything from attacking them at all. But it is our own actions that breaks that prosperity, that breaks that deliverance from God. Our own internal conflicts or our internal contentions, or even contention with others, can break that deliverance from God because it takes the Spirit away from us, and so it weakens our connection to him, and therefore our deliverance that we get by his guidance. And so again, it's very important to remember, it wasn't the Lamanites that messed them up. It was themselves. It was their own internal civil wars, their own border disputes between cities that happened. But behold, the people who possessed the land of Lehi fled to the camp of Moroni and appealed unto him for assistance, for behold, they were not in the wrong. And it came to pass that when the people of Morianton, who were led by a man whose name was Morianton, found that the people of Lehi had fled up to the camp of Moroni, they were exceedingly fearful, lest the army of Moroni should come upon them and destroy them. Therefore Morianton put it into their hearts that they should flee to the land which was northward, which was covered with large bodies of water, and take possession of the land which was northward. And behold, they would have carried this plan into effect, which would have been a cause to have been lamented, but behold, Morianton being a man of much passion, therefore he was angry with one of his maidservants, and he fell upon her and beat her much. And it came to pass that she fled, and came over to the camp of Moroni, and told Moroni all things concerning the matter, and also concerning their intentions to flee into the land northward. Now behold, the people who were in the land bountiful, or rather Moroni, feared that they would hearken to the words of Morianton, and unite with his people, and thus he would obtain possession of those parts of the land, which would lay a foundation for serious consequences among the people of Nephi, yea, which consequences would lead to the overthrow of their liberty. Therefore Moroni sent an army with their camp to head the people of Morianton to stop their flight into the land northward. So the people of Morianton are trying to basically secede. They're trying to go north and kind of claim their own lands to kind of be a separate people. And you know what's awesome and why I love this little section of the story? Is that what drives Moroni to action against the people of Morianton is that a woman that Morianton beat came to Moroni, and Moroni believed her story and listened to her. How awesome is that? Like, it literally says, Morianton got angry with a maidservant and beat her much. And then, the very next verse, she fled to the camp of Moroni and told them everything. How sick is that? And then because of that, because of this brave woman that was able to flee and able to tell her story, there is action taken against the Moriantonites. How awesome is that? I love this tiny little detail, and I think it's overlooked. There are very few stories of women in the Book of Mormon, which does suck, but that means that the stories that do include women are that much more important, and we should focus on that much more. And it's also important to note that what Moroni is doing here by stopping Morianton leaving to the north is that he's focusing on keeping the Nephites united. He doesn't want internal separations of the Nephites because that weakens their not only military strength, but also spiritual strength, because they have this internal civil tension that's happening within their own borders. Having that internal tension weakens them in just about every single way. So Moroni is not only listening to and believing a woman, but also he's focusing on the general unitedness of the Nephites and focusing on how he can maintain it to maintain their strength. And it came to pass that they did not head them until they had come to the borders of the land Desolation, and there they did head them by the narrow pass which led by the sea into the land northward, yea, by the sea on the west and on the east. And it came to pass that the army which was sent by Moroni, which was led by a man whose name was Teancum, did meet the people of Morianton, and so stubborn were the people of Morianton, being inspired by his wickedness and his flattering words, that a battle commenced between them, in the which Teancum did slay Morianton and defeat his army, and took them prisoners, and returned to the camp of Moroni, and thus ended the 24th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi. And thus were the people of Morianton brought back, and upon their covenanting to keep the peace, they were restored to the land of Morianton, and a union took place between them and the people of Lehi, and they were also restored to their lands. And it came to pass that in the same year that the people of Nephi had peace restored unto them, that Nephihah, the second chief judge, died, having filled the judgment seat with perfect uprightness before God. Nevertheless, he had refused Alma to take possession of those records and those things which were esteemed by Alma and his fathers to be most sacred. Therefore, Alma had conferred them upon his son, Helaman. Behold, it came to pass that the son of Nephihah was appointed to fill the judgment seat in the stead of his father. Yea, he was appointed chief judge and governor over the people, with an oath and sacred ordinance to judge righteously, and to keep the peace and the freedom of the people, and to grant unto them their sacred privileges to worship the Lord their God, yea, to support and maintain the cause of God all his days, and to bring the wicked to justice according to their crime. Now behold, his name was Pahoran, and Pahoran did fill the seat of his father, and did commence his reign in the end of the 24th year over the people of Nephi. So this chapter is full of Moroni focusing on unity and strength, and thereby receiving deliverance and prosperity from God. He's focusing not only on spiritual unity, but also literal physical unity. Like, he's trying to stop the people of Morianton from literally leaving to the land northward to get their own lands and separate from the wider Nephite population. He's also strengthening the border between the Nephites and Lamanites so it's more defensible. And he's also fortifying, to a crazy degree, every single one of the Nephite cities. That is freaking awesome, I gotta say. But Moroni has been busy. He does not rest. And so I think that's also a lesson for us. When it comes to defending ourselves against Satan, we don't just fortify and call it good. You know, we don't just say, well, I've already decided not to do this thing, so I'll be fine. We focus and we persist and we are dedicated to being careful and to having the Spirit with us so we can recognize threats when they come. And also, again, I think in some capacity, the promise that God made to Lehi, that those who are obedient to his commandments will be prosperous, applies to us in the modern day. Again, maybe not to as much of a literal degree as it is in the Book of Mormon, but I think that when we are obedient to his commandments, we can have the Spirit with us, and by having the Spirit with us, we can prosper. Whether that's literal physical prosperity, or just spiritual prosperity, who's to say? But either way, we will have that guidance from God to help us become the best version of ourselves when we have the Spirit with us. And we get the Spirit with us when we are obedient to his commands, and also we put in the work, just like Captain Moroni did. Anyways, Captain Moroni is a hard-working guy. Oh my gosh, he really cares about all the details. He doesn't just focus on the tiny details, he also focuses on the broad details. Oh my goodness, this man is such a generalist. So the stand-up verse for this chapter is going to be verse 23, which says, "But behold, there never was a happier time among the people of Nephi since the days of Nephi than in the days of Moroni, yea, even at this time in the 21st year of the reign of the judges." Because again, I've already discussed that Captain Moroni's effort to defend the people brought about deliverance from God. It was his work, his footwork, and his focus on the details that brought that deliverance, that prosperity, that the Nephite people as a whole attributed to God. Which, I've talked about this at length, but it's so cool that the Nephites don't just see deliverance or prosperity as a free gift. I mean, obviously it requires obedience, but still, they don't work for it aside from that. That is not how they think about it. They think about it as God guiding them in the correct direction. They have the Spirit with them, they have that guidance from God to help them prosper themselves. And that is how the 21st year of the reign of the judges became the happiest time among the Nephites. And then a few verses later, it specifies, again, like I've mentioned, that it was their own internal contention that broke their peace. It was not anything that the Lamanites did. It was not anything out of the Nephites' own control. It was their own internal conflict that did it. Anyways, Very important principles to remember when it comes to having the Spirit with us and focusing on our own defense from Satan, etc., etc. Very good stuff. So yeah, that is the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed. It was definitely an interesting one. There's a lot of symbolism, a lot of allegory in these chapters, lots of fun. Anyways, there's just a few links down in the show notes that I want to bring up. The first one is just a quick let me know you learned link, so if you want to shoot me a message and chat about something Book of Mormon related, you can go ahead and do that there, or you can DM me on Instagram, either way. Next, there are a handful of links to access a digital copy of the Book of Mormon, so if you don't have your own copy but you still want to read the words, you can go ahead and click those down there to find your options. Next, there's a quick support the show link, so if you want to shoot me a few dollars and support what I do, that'd be greatly appreciated. Next, we're on YouTube, so if you want to go access the show on that platform, you can go ahead and find the episodes there twice a week, just like on anything else that you listen on. There's also every once in a while trivia on that channel. And finally, we are on Instagram, so if you want to go follow me there, that is where I tend to be the most active. You will find trivia, you will find episode clips, you will find standout verses. All in all, it's a good time. So yeah, that's all I've got for you today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.